Okay.
Hello.
Aloha.
Hi, everybody. We're here with John at the hub. We'll wait for you guys to join in here, but we're going to give you guys a little update today on our Monday after the hub.
It's Friday.
Friday after the hub.
It's Friday.
Thanhave being here, because otherwise I would have totally missed that.
Welcome to Friday,
What day is it?
everybody.
It's been busy, obviously.
It's been a long week.
Yeah, the days just still kind of blend together, so, but for different reasons, so that's good, you know. We're talking today with people here at the hub about how they're kind of reconstructing their situations, and, you know, the traffic at the hub today was a little lighter from what I saw than usual, but that's, you know, a welcome sign for us as usual, right? People maybe are getting all their routines back together, and
Hope so.
yeah, all of that. So yeah, we'll give you guys what we know here today, which is basically, in summary, not a lot of change.
Not a lot of change, but important update from USGS today, because they lowered the alert level. So we went from orange to yellow, from watch to advisory, right? And that's about as low as our level of alert is ever gonna get.
Well,
for Kīlauea.
it's definitely as low as it ever has been, because it's been erupting since before this alert level existed. Right. So that's
a good point.
That's a kind of context of it, right? This, you know, the eruption was older than this alert system, and now we get to actually use a yellow for once. You know.
Cool.
You know, we'll see if that ever.
It's a positive thing.
How that goes. Yeah, it's
Long may it last.
definitely a landmark. Yeah, and while we're at it, you know, we can talk. What USGS said was it's been more than 30 days.
More than 30 days.
Without lava at the surface.
I disagree with them, though, because I've been watching very carefully.
So what's the real number, John?
27 days.
27 days is the real number. So it's been...
I'll give it to him. It's okay.
Yeah. See, that's why they need someone watching all the time, right?
It's been a while, so that's good. That's a month since our last little squeeze-up activity, that when we found the glow, and even with that squeeze-up activity, even during that time, we weren't having any other elevated signals suggesting anything more was on the way. So you can look at it as we've had 2 months or longer since the lava stopped flowing, and it's been just about a month since we had any lava to speak of. So
at the surface.
At the surface.
Because it's always underground. It's
right.
like keep
it's
telling everyone it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't disappear, it doesn't cool within our lives, really. I mean, it gets colder, but it doesn't, you know, become all the way solid, likely, you know, for a long time. So, you know, that's not a valid thing to expect necessarily, you know. I mean, it's always kind of down there all the time, yeah. So, but, you know, the mechanism that was driving eruption, you know, has been stopped for 2 months. I think we can say that. The mechanism that kind of pushed lava to the surface about a month ago, 27 days ago, to be precise, was different than what caused the 3-month eruption, you know. And that could possibly still happen again, but there is no signs of that at all that we can see anywhere, you know, as far as the lava actually moving towards the surface. It's definitely still down there. The signal, as we've been saying for how many weeks now? 3 weeks now we've been talking about inflation signals that might portend inflation, that show, you know, some movement, you know, within the rift zone. You know, it was first at Pu'o'o, and we've seen some hint of the signal down and Kīlauea. There is some hint of it now, I believe, as far up as Kīlauea.
Okay, cool. On the new GPS one?
On the GPS spots, yeah, we'll look at the GPS in a little bit, you know, maybe not too far down the rabbit hole, but we can if we want to. There's a lot of information on the GPS spots that got put up, you know, on Tracker. So Hawaii Tracker, Dane has expanded the GPS page to include even more GPS stations on the Hawaii Tracker page. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about.
More data.
We'll look at that as well. What else at the USGS report? We basically...
Well, I'm sure we can touch back on it, but the USGS report, you know, points out that, you know, this pause and the signals we're getting now, which isn't a whole lot of hints of much. They're watching some important signals, keeping track of the hot cracks that are still by Highway 130. So keeping track of those things, always vigilant, but based on the signals we've been having, they think of it as not likely for any renewed activity in the short term. And on the short term, we're literally talking about within weeks to months, or maybe longer. and that's our short-term look at a volcano, right? And so that's good because our short term with no lava might become a longer and longer period. So we can kind of touch back on our thoughts on that when we go through the data signals. And apart from that, they caution that there could still be other things happening, random collapsing in the crater, the unstable crater at the summit. And in the future, there could be more activity that they kind of touch on, that there's always a risk of explosions or eruptions at the summit one day in the future. But at the moment, it doesn't seem likely in the coming weeks to months, that short term, none of that, we don't have any signals of it coming up soon. And so that's really good. So we're continuing to march toward feeling like it's totally over. And a lot of people have been joking, this might be as close as we get to a declaration of it being over. Yeah. But we'll discuss some of the theoretical stuff for it, I'm sure, as we go in there. Yeah. And then there still could be, one thing I thought was interesting, they put in the report, the coast at Kīlauea. They still think if there's collapses there could be steam explosions. So they kind of warned about that. But those are the hazards we're aware of if you're out there. But volcanic activity isn't looking very likely in the short run, so that's cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have a report up here on a screen for you guys. You know, I'm not read the whole thing verbatim, but we can check the points and make sure we cover it all for you guys. Since it is so, it's probably, you know, we've just heard maybe the most comprehensive update that covers the most ground from what we've seen. You know, probably just finally had enough time to, like, you know, synthesize everything and make, you know, really the best possible update, which was clearly a challenge when everything was happening so quickly every day, right? You know, so we'll look at that. But that brings me to a thought that you were talking about that's not in the update, which is the steam plumes at the coast that we reported seeing from up in Puna. Mm-hmm. So, brief report.
We may or may not have been somewhere in Lower Puna, and we could see out to Kīlauea past Green Mountain from our location, and there were two little steam clouds. This was on Sunday afternoon, and we kept looking back to the coast out there and could see these little steam clouds that looked exactly like one little minor ocean entry, two side by side, kind of close, and it persisted throughout the afternoon while we were there in little poofs of steam. So, you know, we were checking that out, debating what it could be, and it's possible something cracked open and broken. There might have actually been some sludgy, oozy lava continuing to break out, or it could have been something broken, exposed hot rock, and the waves were washing up on it. We were just wishing that we could have had a jetpack to zoom over there to see what was actually happening. But either thing is possible, because it'll be hot underneath that crust for a long time. So any shifting at the coast, we might see more of that kind of stuff. But by the next day, by Scott's aerial flight a day or two later, there wasn't anything to see. So it didn't last.
So yeah, that's our jelly donut, jelly sandwich area, right? So, you know, that same kind of jelly core of it either leaked out a tiny bit or didn't leak out very much, but the crack, you know, remember that lava extends offshore, and it's in places that were the ocean, and it reaches down to the sea floor where where the bottom of the bay was, right?
Hundreds of feet thick. Yeah.
So I mean, you could have a crack that easily goes below sea level.
Oh yeah. Good.
Right, and the water could be getting in a crack underground, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. under the water level and coming out of steam slightly. That could happen, you know, and you could have a persistent steam plume kind of in one spot. It could be that you had like a crack, or the waves just happen to wash in there particularly easy. It's just the right orientation facing the swell, let's call it, right? And maybe it just splash goes in there and gives it the puff. Although I believe that a little bit less because, you know, from early days of lava eruptions on the Kīlauea area, it usually takes 2 or 3 days before we actually see a steam plume arise from the ocean entry.
Interesting.
Unless it's like a huge river dumping in one spot, like usually like a little trickle. It doesn't always like produce a, you know. And not only that, there were also times when we had ocean entries stopped and we had bench collapses, and we'd see steaming from the site for days afterwards with no lava for sure as well. So that kind of complicates it. That's kind of, I'm laying it out so you guys realize just steam by itself doesn't always mean lava. It can mean lava. It could have been lava. No one was there to see it.
Yeah, wish we could have seen it.
Might have been. But if it was such a tiny amount that it like dribbled quite locally, and there's no chance of it doing anything beyond that. It's done. Yeah. Right. So
when we were looking at it, it's not like we're thinking, oh, is it reactivating? We're like, I wonder what broke open, or I wonder what shifted over there. We just wished we could have seen, but it didn't last, and we might see more of that later. You know, it could be possible to see steam like that for quite some time to come into the future, months into the future. That could still happen. So.
Yeah, the Kapoho area is all steaming heavily.
Like you can see the gas coming out of the Kapoho area, because those are areas where the lava accumulation is an average of like 40 to 60 feet across most of the Kapoho Vacation Lands area, and near Green Mountain it's over 100 feet deep, the accumulation. So there's hot rock and probably hot lava under a lot of areas there that will stay hot for years, probably. So.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. I'm trying to find you guys a picture to show you, but I don't think I can get it out in time. Maybe I can show you guys a little later. But anyways, you guys can just trust us that the whole area is basically all steamy, you know, not just by the shore, but like all the way inland, but all the way between Green Mountain and the shoreline. There's like, you know, it's not continuously steaming everywhere, but there's definitely spots all over the place that are fuming. More so there than other areas, like more so there than in Leilani, apart from the actual fisher line in Leilani and everywhere else. Lanipuna, you see the fisher line itself putting out lots of gas, but it's not across the whole flow field as such per se, right? So
it's unique down there because it's so deep. So it's quite a bit different than most of the rest of the flow field. I keep looking away in the camera if you're wondering. I got a new book. Me and Phil both got one. A friend at USGS.
Oh, here, I'm going to turn the camera around. So read what it says. Yeah,
200 years of magma storage and transport. How exciting. This is gold, this book. So thank you very much, Sarah Conway and USGS for the great publication. Lots to digest, lots of new ways of looking at past eruptions, and so this is great. And I'm very distracted while we're doing this video. New book.
So, well, I'll just keep emceeing. You can distract yourself and jump in whenever you like.
Okay.
Let's turn to the tilt and go through the signals that we have on that. So let me turn the camera around. And let's look first at the USGS site as usual and show that. Here's a pointer, John. Show that our summit tilt has been more or less flat over the last day, right? And you know, even if it was wiggling a little bit, the scale here is right. The top is 2 to -2, so it's really nothing happening there apart from the heat of the day. And Pu'o over the last 2 days is rising slightly. It looks like maybe less than 1 microradian. So you can see the scale here. So similarly, it's fairly flat. You know, if you kind of look, if you zoom out to the past week, you can see that that trend has kind of been a flattish rising trend for a while. And if you zoom out to the past month, you can see it's actually been going on for a couple weeks, right? Half the month plot. And you know, if you like start to like squint at it, maybe it's slightly different rate, but it's just, there's not much you can really tell in my opinion.
Yeah, it might be getting a little flatter when we look at the shorter time frame. It looks like it's leveling out, but it's hard to say because it's not changing much.
Yeah,
getting a little flatter.
Yeah, and one thing that's been pointed out is turn this back. One thing that's been pointed out, you know, in the USGS report today is that even though these are amounts of information that are noticeable, they're much less. The way they're putting it is much less than anything happening during eruption. And while they might indicate signs of the rift zone filling, it's at such a slow rate, given the magnitudes of this information, that nothing is expected imminently eruption-wise. Right. So it could be doing this pattern for a long, long time without any surface effect. So we just have to wait and see on that. You know, I still hold to the gas really right now as like my you know,
the smoking gun theory.
Yeah, I mean
the gas.
Galaxy, because we're not quite as sure about the earthquakes. You know, I still feel like we will have earthquakes.
We'll still feel.
Yeah, I think we'll.
Aloha. How are you gonna?
So you know, the earthquakes. I feel like we might still have earthquakes. I think we might have tilt, but they're not guaranteed things. And you know, for sure, whenever you have fresh magma, there's always gas. Like there's no way around it.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to come out somewhere. Even if it doesn't come out where the lava's going to come out, it's going to come out somewhere, and that tells you some hint. It might come out somewhere years ahead of time even, right? Yeah. So, you know, the fact that gas emissions now are being reported to be the lowest since before 1983, before they even had these measurement techniques that we use today, right? So basically it's the least gas ever measured. Doesn't mean it's the least gas it's ever been. It's just ever measured because we're measuring it this particular way.
Yeah. By this technique, it's the lowest that we've recorded with the modern measuring techniques.
We haven't been measuring that long, but still, right? That's still noteworthy, you know, considering we've all lived in the shadow of this 35-year volcanic eruption most of our lives, you know, so absolutely noteworthy. So, you know, the fact that there is no fresh gas coming out, there's plenty of gas, it's just not the fresh gas, right? The gas people are still smelling, the SO2 and the H2S, or these later phase magmatic gases, H2S especially, right? You know, you want to see a higher CO2 to SO2 ratio in particular is what we look for signs of fresh magma coming up, and that's what we're looking for in Dosi. So, I mentioned before that they've seen those as much as 2 years ahead of time at the summit, right? Seen a spike in the CO2, SO2 ratio, and then within a couple of years, actually seeing lava lake come up to the summit, kind of thing. You know, that kind of signal.
Yeah. So the gases are definitely a definite indication, and we're really low gas. And so one way to look at what's happening, and we'll talk more about the GPS and the tilt signal and what it all means, but if the lava is in fact beginning to refill the eastern rift, and there's some indication of that, especially in the middle of the rift from Pu'u'o and a slightly down rift of there. If that is already happening, here's one way to look at it. We've just been through this major event. We've drained a huge amount of lava from the volcano. We've emptied all sorts of known storage areas along the rift and at the summit. And so perhaps there's a lot of refilling to do, recharging to do before we lead into any type of activity on the surface again. So all that lava, if it is lava already refilling the rift, it could take it a long time to work up to the next eruption. So that's the hopeful sort of ideal about the signs that we're seeing now. It might start as nothing imminent over weeks to months, and we'll have to wait and see. We might still be talking like this in a few years, potentially, waiting to see if it's gonna finish refilling. So this slight inflation we're starting to see is slight enough that it might continue like that for a very long time before we see new activity. So just try to give you that perspective on it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, one thing that we can get into in our future updates is in this book that we actually have tilt charts that go back
200 years. Not 200 years, but
yeah, 50s anyways, right?
50s.
And what we can do is we can show you guys, you know, how different tilt patterns have looked in the past, and you know, signals that are sometimes associated with eruptions, and sometimes eruptions that don't have a whole lot of signals with them either, right? So you kind of see the whole spectrum of it, even though, you know, in our recent understanding of the volcanic eruption, we've been relying on that quite a bit. That hasn't always been how it's been, you know, and tilt technology is part of it. We can talk about that when we get to it as well, but you know, basically there's a longer history of tilt we can refer to, and we'll share with you guys at some point as well. I did find the picture, let me see if I can get it back now. I did find a picture of the steaming Kapoho. I'm gonna show you guys, where is it over here? So I'm gonna turn the camera right, so cut some images. This is our, see if I can avoid the glare a little bit. Yeah, guys, just have to deal with glare at the hub, it's just how it is, I guess. But, yeah, not too bad. So, let's see. Areas in Kapoho. Different steaming areas. I haven't curated these at all, but like there's looking towards Pohoriki, you guys can see there's still plenty of steam along the path of the old lava tube that was heading down to Halanui, right? Pohoriki being right there. So, yeah, so it's definitely still steaming. So, back to the tilt.
Yep. A couple more to speak of. So, want to do the Hawaii tracker?
Yeah, let's switch to Hawaii tracker. Over here. So, Hawaii tracker. All right. There's our. What's going on? I have my flashlight on. That's why there's glare. Huh. Sorry, you guys. Operator issue here.
Thought you meant to do
that. All right, so okay, what we're looking for is, so we can review these in general. Summer camp plot is flattish, you know, although still tilting back towards the, well, I won't go into the details about every aspect like that, but basically it's basically flat, and that one is basically flat too. And this one back here, if you look at the bottom of these signals over here, it's flattish, some variation. right? And then here it's not, right? Pu'u'o is where you clearly see it's not flat. And the Jonica flow.
Yeah, and this is the one I was watching really closely, especially back here when it switched from coming down slightly and started rising. But you can kind of see, I mean, we're dealing with a very small scale, about a microradian, but it's definitely gotten flatter and maybe even starting to come back down again. And this one looks like it's flatter, but so what started as looking like it was going to continue inflating really hasn't inflated much for quite some time. It's been basically holding steady. But the GPS, which we'll discuss next, gives us another level of looking at the inflation. So it's between Pu'u'o and a little down rift towards Jonica that have the strongest signals suggesting refilling of the rift so far. But it's small.
Right. And you know, I still have to add the caveat that it's so small that it could be refilling of the rift, but it could be just some other process as well that, you know, produces very small tilt signals.
But I think it's magma.
Yeah, which is a valid thought. I'm not saying if that's not valid. Yeah. I'm just saying there are other possible reasons, at least in my mind.
Okay, that's valid too.
So,
I get it.
But let's look at the GPS. And here is a revamped Hawaii Tracker GPS page here, and you know he's actually got being put up a new map here with all the different stations and some more info. But basically, there's extra stations on here. And what we're seeing at the summit is still a bunch of flat nothing over here. Actually, if you look at Pu'u'o plot, the distance between Pu'u'o and the Jacuzzi line, right? We seem to have a very slight indication, you know, maybe just look at the scale here. Our scale this is 10 centimeters, right? So that's probably 1 centimeter. So it's not a whole lot yet. Maybe not enough to really base any interpretation off of, but it's becoming visible on a plot at least, right? So interesting to see what's happening there, because you know that looks like it's actually
leaning in.
Yeah, leaning inwards. Yeah, I mean it's I hesitate to use the words deflation with GPS because well, because there's two things at play. There is the rift zone injecting magma, right? And there's a soft flank moving from gravity. And depending on a balance between the two, the rift zone magma can push the soft flank so it can slide faster, or depending on how the soft flank is stable, it can actually slide first and then induce an eruption. It's one of those which one can happen. So when I see GPS in particular, GPS measures moving the ground, which could be the soft flank leading the rift zone in some cases. So I like to just be very specific and say the ground is moving, and then leave off the why. We have to figure out the why through some other means. And you know, it could be from magma pushing in, but it could be from, for example, these aftershocks of the 6.9 earthquake we keep hearing about. The soft flank is still moving very slightly, not nearly as much as before, but it is moving, and you know that could show up in GPS. And we'll look at that here. I think that's going to come up again, actually, not very shortly when we talk about these tilt signals here. So moving on, looking near Pu'u'o, this is called the Pu'u'o Jacuzzi Station, which is an area named by helicopter pilots way back when there was a jacuzzi-like of lava in the area. But what you guys can see is that on some of these plots, so if you look at the east component, these are all kind of flat, so it's still like a 10 centimeter scale between the lines, right? So yeah, there's a very maybe insignificant drop, a little wiggle, insignificant drop, basically steady there, and basically steady there. And this one is showing a very slight uptick there, but you know, I mean, you could argue there's a very slight downtick. I don't know. It's so slight that you really got to start doing math to figure out what the probability of some amount of movement actually is. So looking down at Jonica, you see a similar pattern where you actually see now looking at the height of change from the trough to the peak here. I think we figured out it was what maybe like 5 centimeters, somewhere in that range, something like that. So that starts to become more believable that actually that ground is actually moving. In this case, away from the rift zone again, right?
Yes, towards the north. So that's kind of the important thing about this data is that, especially as the vertical GPS component continued to rise, rather, that this information from GPS coordinates with the indication of the tilt, and so those things together start to suggest it could be refilling. But as Phil said, you know, scientifically you can still be dubious of this because it's still slight. Yeah? Yeah. But the signals are telling the same story, so we can start to look at that as there is real ground movement going on away from the rift on GPS, and there's some tilting of the rift suggesting inflation of the rift on the tilt. But the signals are all really small, so it's not like we're getting ready for another eruption. It's just that could be a sign that there's magma refilling. So.
Right. Just, yeah, so absolutely. And, you know, as we discussed, you know, multiple lines of evidence is what we're looking for, multiple data signals pointing to the same kind of solution, you know, but at the same time entertaining these multiple theories, which is kind of how it gets kind of complicated, right? Because, you know, to throw another wrench in the whole machine here, you know, if the south flank is moving, would the area next to the rift tilt?
Depends which way.
It could. Let's just say it could. And without going more deeper than that, is it? I have no idea. I wouldn't go as far as to say that's what's happening, you know, but it's possible. That makes it, you know, that's, you know, one reason we want to really see these convincing signals from multiple sources, and ideally we'd have a third source like the gas emission saying, oh look, there's more magma because there's more gas. Yeah. And that's what we're still kind of waiting to discover. You know?
Since there is no gas, that's another thing that increases our confidence that, well, at least for the short run, probably nothing is going to happen because we're missing the gas to coordinate with these other signals. So, and there you go. That's so in the short run, we can be pretty confident that it's not reactivating soon. And then we'll see as weeks and days go on how much more confident we become, or if something else is changing by that time. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Let's look some more GPS since we have fun doing it, and you guys can come along for the ride, and hopefully we're not nerding out too much on you guys. But looking down the line, here's Devil's Throat Station. This is on an upper East Rift Zone, and what you guys can see is that it's very interesting. The actual ground began moving before the big jump, right? So to remind you guys of the sequence, we actually had a 5.4 earthquake on April 30th that was followed by an earthquake swarm between Pu'o and Leilani, right? That was the beginning of the eruption, was that first crack which opened from Pu'o down towards Leilani. The 6.9 earthquake followed 5 days later on May 4th, right? So there's a gap between the first ground movement and then the actual big earthquake, which wedged the whole East Rift Zone. And I personally believe that what you're seeing is like that little gap right there, right? You see like the actual beginning of the eruption, you know, right? You know, as far as a crack moving, and then you see the big jump from the 6.9 earthquake. Yep. And then it's re-equilibrating from there, right? So we actually see, you know, interesting, that pattern reflects here also. It's, you know, it wasn't the summit that began the whole thing, but the summit followed, you know, it was like a 1-2 punch. The summit wasn't the 2 punch, and, you know, it was the harder punch of, you know, both of them, right? But it definitely was the second one that came after the fact, right? And that's hinted at by that plot right there, and I think we'll see that similar pattern elsewhere. You don't see as much in the other components of the Devil's Throat signal. But Kananui Ohamo, you can kind of see it's not as clear here, but you see there's one dot right up there, right? It actually jumped before going the other way, you know, so there might have been a shorter time scale here, but here you see a little bit also, you know, it's actually a little bit of movement up before a big movement up, right? You know, with also a wiggle downwards. And what I was mentioning before, John, is if we look down here at this very similar plot, you can see the slight similar pattern, and right in there as well, right? It does see a similar kind of thing. Farther up the rift zone as well, right? So, and the thing that's interesting to me is that these are largely middle and lower East Rift Zone stations. The upper East Rift Zone stations don't show this as much, which is interesting because to me, that ties to the south flank again, because those are all bounding the south flank, and the upper East Rift Zone stations are not, and that's just something to kind of keep in mind as we kind of go through our our thinking is eruption gives us more and more signals, right? So
here we are. Alternative explanation for
you
that.
You wanna hit it up now?
It might be a whole can of worms, so no, just keep going with this.
Okay.
I'll include it in a different way.
We'll bring that up again
when we do a breakdown.
All right, we'll bring it up again later. So, okay, you know, looking at this outlet station, right? You guys see this is an interesting signal. I hadn't looked at that one quite as. This is probably getting close to the summit, I would guess, where the summit had different stages of collapse, right? If we look at, let's scroll, well, is it on this plot? All the way up here, yeah, here. Right, if we look at our summit, like a Huna plot, we actually see we had, you know, different, you know, initial phase, a slowdown, a second phase, a second slowdown, and a final phase, right, of summit collapse. So that first thing I think when I see that signal over here, reflected down here, is maybe we had some, you know, some influence of the summit on a pattern right there, right? Let's look at the outlet. Let's look at the map and see if that is substantiated by the position of this thing. So let's zoom in here. And if you're looking close, the outlet station is right next to the summit. So there you go.
South.
So that was definitely feeling that summit collapse effect, right? Where did it go? Jacuzzi, Jonica. Even the Jonica, look, it's got the interesting up, down, up.
Yep. I was
down,
checking
up,
that out. It jerked back and forth as that initial phase happened. Really interesting.
Okay, so outlet, crater rim, summit as well, right? So a similar reflection of that pattern with the initial jump, right? Same thing in reverse. Not a whole lot of change in the signal at the summit that we're seeing on that middle and lower east rift zone, right? Here's North Kīlauea. This is one that we've been discussing already. This is a station at PGV, right? Which is actually showing not a lot. Also, it's still kind of on the downtrend, right? So beyond 130, right? The USGS report mentions all the way to Highway 130 and not beyond that. So beyond 130, we're not seeing that as much.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's a new boundary we have between 130 and Leilani all of a sudden. It's been kind of coming into play.
Yep.
And we're talking about in the future, up on a trail. You guys can see, you know, basically not much more information there. You're going to start to follow a similar pattern after that.
But look how much GPS data we have. All these different stations are available to check out now. It's very cool.
Look at this one, right? It actually has two different fractures, right?
That's amazing. Yeah.
So, Malka Kukanine, right? That's up by the Kauai fault system, I believe.
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
So, areas of those faults, once again, on the south flank, right? So, if there's some other, you know, it's hard to say here if this was actually the first 5-4 and this is like the 6-9. They're probably not. This is probably something that happened later on.
Yeah.
I would guess it's probably when we changed slope and the summit collapses. You know, when we started collapsing the deeper, the greater crater up at the summit. Maybe that's when we saw this actual break. So there was a clear structural change that happened then as well.
Interesting.
Right. That would be my first thought there. So that's all of our geeky GPS data, you guys. So, yes, it's raining here at the hub. It's been raining off and on all day. Let's see if I can scroll back, guys, and get some of your questions here now. So, numbers of people who've gotten back home. We don't know how many people have gotten back home. We just don't know that. You know, some people are moving back in. The ones that are still around who have the means and have the
Talk to a few people that are moving back into... not into Leilani, but lower down Kamaili area. So they're getting ready to finally move back in. They've been holding off. So everybody's finding a different way about this, and a lot of people are moving back in, and other people are still hanging back, which I respect as well, because you never know. Yeah. But everyone who's getting back is like a big relief, and it's really positive when people are talking about getting back to their place. And so it's kind of an interesting time, and especially with the official word from USGS weighing in on it that reactivation doesn't seem likely in the long term, that increases people's confidence about moving back in, and it's another step towards that feeling of relief and recovery. So it's cool to witness.
Yeah, this is just one of the steps. Yeah, we heard people are really excited and going through all that. We also people who are still too scared to go back in. Yeah. This is not about us and what the science says. It's about people being comfortable with their decisions going forward. which is clearly an individual thing, right? So like, you know, if you're not comfortable going back in, whatever we say, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You gotta get comfortable on your own, you know, so, but, you know, from our point of view, scientifically, you know, we are not seeing any signs of that happening again anytime real soon.
Not anytime real soon.
Yeah. So maybe now we can, you know, I mean, there's more data to show you guys. We can get back to it here in a little while, and we got too long. But you know, maybe it's worth talking about, bringing up again what I'm talking about for a long time. When do you call an eruption over? Like, is it an actual arbitrary thing that humans decide? Oh, it's over if it's been stopped for so many days. Is like, you know, we've talked about the criteria for a pause. That's definitely a number of days kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But eruptions that kind of go on, you know, I've, you know, even historically, talking to visitors at the summit, like, you know, we've said before, it's even been on Science, the lava lake at the summit has existed for 100 years in a row, from 1823 and 24. Well, there are times in there where it stopped for a while, and the crater collapsed, and do we count that eruption as having stopped and restarted? Or is it the same thing still going? And, you know, and that, by that statement of being continuous 100 years, we're clearly implying it was continuing, and we're not going to call it over because it was basically the same kind of thing happening again. Right? Even though there have been years between one eruption and the next at the summit through some of those intervals, right? So that's one take on when you call it over. Well, if it's in the same place, then never. Right?
Big gaps, but it was the same activity in the same place, so they think of it as one thing.
Yeah.
But
even
was it really one eruption?
Even if there was like, what, as many as, I don't know, 5, 6 years. I mean, there were some big gaps of time in between there.
Yeah.
So that's one way to think of it. The other way to think of it is, you know, like, okay, well, if it stops in one place and erupts, like, you know, 100 yards over, but it's been 3 years later, you call it a new fissure, right? Like in the case of Kīlauea, we do call it that.
Right.
We have two fissures literally 100 yards apart, with less than, sometimes 20 yards apart.
Yep.
Right? And we call them two separate eruptions. 71 Kīlauea eruption and 74 Kīlauea eruption.
Yep.
Very similar mechanism, very simple. You know, they look almost identical. In fact, if you don't look at the data of the photograph, you have a hard time, and you don't study the place, you have a hard time which one is which.
Yep, they look exactly the same, those two eruptions in the same spot. So
yeah, they both refer to Mauna Ulu, so a similar mechanism even, you know, similar source underground, so it's... But my point is, it's arbitrary. It's arbitrary when you decide to call one thing over and the next one started.
Yeah.
So, you know, for a while I've been comfortable saying, well, this chapter is done, and whatever happens next is a new chapter. I'll call it something new. I've been comfortable with that, but not everyone has been, and people may not be comfortable with that for a long time still, which is fine.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, though, because I think in all of the scenarios that I've been pondering during this pause, I think probably the least likely thing is to see suddenly Fissure 8 wake up again and we're raging giant river of lava again. You know, I think that the same type of activity is probably not going to occur in the same way again at this time. Probably because we've drained the reservoir that was draining, and it stopped when it finished draining. That's one of the things that I see as pretty likely as what's happened here, one way to analyze it, and Phil mostly agrees. And so, or I think totally agrees with that part. But so I don't think it's likely to see the same eruption continue. And one of the likely scenarios I was toying with is that it could continue at a lower rate. But even that doesn't seem likely for the short run, right? And then, but to kind of echo what Phil was saying, but from a different angle, one way I look at it is it's always a pause, because this is Kīlauea, and there's hardly a moment where there's not activity. That's the nature of this volcano as one of the most active in the world. And so, I mean, right now we have, this is one of the longest periods without lava on the surface since 1986. Which makes it one of the longest periods without lava. There have been periods where there wasn't as much activity in the 1930s and stuff. There were some longer gaps, several years before there was activity again. But apart from that, Kīlauea hardly ever rests, right? And so even if this pause becomes a longer pause and a longer pause, and it's years before the next activity, USGS points out this Kīlauea, it's very active, so at any time we could go through all of this or something similar again. And so looking at the East Rift, we don't know for sure what state our volcano is in now. Maybe it'll take a long time to recharge and then erupt in the lower East Rift again. And of course that would be terrible. That's the last thing we want. Maybe it'll take a long time to recharge, but then erupt at the summit instead. But the point is, you have to be cognizant of these things. You got to be aware that the activity can return, acknowledge the signs, stay informed, but hopefully this pause will last a good long time and give everybody time to recover.
Yeah. So I've said it before. It's never over. Like when people ask, "When is it over?" It's like, well, my first response is it's never over.
Never over.
But in the context of humans deciding things are over, yes, it is over. Right? On a human perspective, day to day, like what do you do this, today and next week, it's over.
Yeah.
As far as the volcano, it's never over. It's always gonna keep erupting again. We all live on a volcano. We're gonna deal with this again in our lives sometime. It may not be Kīlauea, it may be Mauna Loa.
It
might even be the southwest rift of Kīlauea, which we haven't talked about hardly at all during this whole eruption, but it's a player.
That would be interesting.
It's a player. In fact, many summit eruptions are accompanied by southwest rift eruptions at the same time. So, at some point we can discuss this, but like it's as likely as anything else, in my mind, you know what I mean? Like, unlike the southeast rift is a straight shot from the summit, right? So like doesn't require pressurizing extra and like working around a bend and all that stuff. It just kind of shoots in there and sometimes squirts out.
Yeah.
And that's it, and sometimes it goes through a giant crack near the surface and comes out and miles away.
Yeah.
And
the good thing about the Southwest Rift is it's out in the Kīlauea Desert, and so nobody lives there. It's all in the national park. The trouble is, when it erupts, people downwind will get gases and things like that. So there's always some effect on people. But if we want to talk about where to put the lava, in the national park is the better bet. Yeah. Out in the desert is the better bet, or in the summit.
Yeah. There's, we have a very fresh 1 billion cubic yard hole.
Yep.
That we could fill of lava. That's in addition to the hole we had before.
Yep.
Which was already huge, right? So we could probably fit, I would say, I don't know, maybe 3 billion cubic yards of we can fit a lot of lava up there at the summit before it actually has to go anywhere else.
Fill anywhere else, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great place for it to go.
Probably our best case scenario is after this repose period where the volcano is resting and recharging, it would be good if we see lava at the summit again.
Yeah.
And we've talked about summit scenarios before. I don't know if we'll get into that tonight, but it'd be better if we see the lava at the summer sooner, so maybe we have lava flows and no explosions. But that's just it. We are always trying to reduce the uncertainty, and when we talk about what could happen in the future, it's all this uncertainty. And what people are looking for is some affirmation that it's over. Can I move back in? As humans, we need to reduce that uncertainty, and it's with a volcano, it's so hard to really do that. Which is, why the language of saying, well, yeah, you can think of it over now, and hopefully it stays over. But you see, that's the predicament we're in. And as humans, we want some certainty so we can calm down, so we can heal, and get on with our lives. And so this step of reducing the alert level is USGS way of encouraging our confidence that it's over, right? So.
All right. We'll take a couple more questions, and we can maybe can we'll get into some of those points. I brought up. There are a lot of good points.
Yeah.
But so let me see. Let's see. Someone was asking about share a book and more feeds. Okay, we can do that in the future.
Yeah, this book, man, already it's got so many curveballs and monkey wrenches in our theories and alternative ideas and complex explanations. I love it already, so it's going to give a lot of different insight into some of the things we've already talked about.
This is a USGS special publication, of which there are, I think, 3 others that we refer to regularly.
Yeah.
So it's just one more. What's really nice is that having it in paper in front of you means you don't have to keep like pointing to the screen. Or actually can show you guys
I'm
on
old
the feed
school.
a little bit.
I like bound books. I like paper maps. So this is perfect for me. Great. I'll study it a lot.
So okay, someone is asking about clothes. We don't have any more. We don't stop doing clothes at the hub. There was some more bedding that showed up today, but that's like the closest we've come to supplies here. So sorry, getting you guys questions a little bit late here, but I'm just going back in. We have a legal drone. There are actually, speaking of drones, there are more places to fly drones now. The flight restrictions down in Puna have been relieved, so we believe it is legal to fly drones now, in Puna. Not so in a park still, because a park, as part of the National Park System, has a park-wide policy nationwide of no drones. So that hasn't changed. So let's see. But no one had a drone to go fly out to the ocean and check on that steam at the time, so we just don't know.
It was really far away, but maybe we can solve that mystery if it happens again, or somebody will see it again.
Right. Okay, so I can't read the very long comments, but the first half was comments asking about plans to open a viewing spot. Yes, there are plans to open a viewing spot. There are several plans. The official county plan is to do one at the Y intersection, by Lava Tree State Park. It's not going to happen very quick, we don't believe, because, they have to go out to some bid process, to, get a contractor to come up with putting a trail and a viewing platform up there. There's probably going to have to be some facilities like, at least porta potties of some kind, So that's going to be ongoing, but there are plans for that. Yeah. For now, people can go down to Mackenzie Park to see the recent lava is the best place to go.
Yep.
And we've heard the trail is getting improved, but it's still pretty gnarly to walk across the trail across the upflow down by Mackenzie. But that's where you can see lava from this year is over there. Mm-hmm. There's nowhere right now to legally see Fissure 8 yet, but that will be coming at some point. And we believe that that the hub is going to probably play some role in people going to visit these areas, just by being by the location where we are, people are probably going to come through here. We're going to try to set it up so people can come through here and get information in the future. So that's kind of happening in tandem with that as well. And, promise you guys, we'll keep you guys updated with that as it occurs. So we'll be excited when we finally can say that it's open, but it's going to be a while still.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's keep scrolling back for you guys. Let's see what other questions. Pause, formations. I can't read any long comments. I can't see what the bottom of that thing is. Someone asked me, I did work for Volcanic Discovery in the past. Yes, Ethan. I did used to work for them, and not for a while recently though, just because, it's not worth going into, but I have nothing but good things to say about Volcanic Discovery, and I consider them still partners and friends, but I don't work directly for them anymore. So, let's see, looking back. Everyone's saying hello. Okay, I think I caught up back to the hello. Cool. So thank you guys for the comments. The landscape mode is great for you guys seeing more screen, but it's really bad for looking at comments. You gotta scroll and see one or two at a time. So let me just get back to the bottom here and see what you guys are saying since I started answering your questions. Okay, ring. Possible fog. Okay, so there is still fog coming out of the volcano, volcanic gases. Yeah. The amounts coming out are lower than the USGS detection limits.
The instruments, yeah.
But not lower than our nose detection, right? So people are still definitely smelling the fog. There shouldn't be as much of it as before anymore, right? So what we do smell should be kind of localized. Should be able to get out of it a little more easily. It shouldn't be as widespread as far out to sea if you're in Kona, and maybe not lasting as long. But I don't know. But there definitely is still fog. Yep. At the summit, there are days where you can kind of see it really well, when it's like a little cooler, cooler air. Dry days you don't see it, but it's still definitely warm up there as well,
And we can see a little bit of it just driving into Pahoa and things like that from Kapoho. There's still gases and fumes being emitted from the flow field, and you can kind of see the clouds laced with a little bit of smoggy haziness. And some people downwind of the Fissure 8 still smell it occasionally, but it's definitely getting less. And so you're not crazy if you're still smelling it, but we know overall the gases are quite low. But we'll probably smell them once in a while continuing. And again, gases is a really important signal. So if we do see the gases start to rise, well, that combined with our tilt and stuff might indicate that there's magma moving through the system. And then we'll watch and see if the gases get to a level that we're concerned about. But it's just the thing. You're probably still smelling them, but they're at an all-time low. This is the summary.
Yeah, good job, yeah. Okay, next question from Dallas. The longest pause in the continuous eruption.
45.5 days, they said, in Pu'uo'o's eruption.
Yeah, it all depends on the definition of continuous.
Oh, the definition of continuous. See, that's that again. So that's an important yep.
Yeah, because we're back there again, right? Because, so what was referred to in the USGS report today is exactly what you said. 46.5 days, the eruption. That was the one that was before 86, right? So they say it was longest since 86. In 86, before 86, that was the pause between those Kupoinaha and Fountain events. I'm not sure exactly where in there, if it's in, but 86 was Kupoinaha year.
Right.
But just a month ago, we were talking about Mauna Ulu having a 3-month pause, right? And that was thrown about quite wildly, like, oh, it could be paused for 3 months and still come back up and start again, you know, no others. And for a while I was saying, well, yeah, that's true, it can, but we saw inflation in between, right? And you know, that's another example of, do we call that one eruption? Because Mauna Ulu went from 69 to 72, 71, 72, right? Then had like that 3-month gap, then started back up again with these kind of Kīlauea eruption in between it, right? So actually the eruption in a different place interrupted it, and then went back to the original place. We called it the same eruption. We called it a 5-year eruption.
And we had the 1973 fissure right at Mauna Ulu that was erupting while Mauna Ulu was erupting. And it turned out to be totally separate magma. They were 2 eruptions in the same spot. So how do you judge, right? They were happening together. But as we look back on that eruption, the 1973 fissure was a totally separate event, right in the same spot at the same time. So you see how complicated it all can be. And the other thing, kind of go in a different direction with that, is the USGS also mentions Pu'uo'o paused for almost 6 years, but during that time the lava was erupting elsewhere at Kūpaenaha. And so Pu'uo'o was over for those 5 or 6 years while lava continued to come from a different vent, and then lo and behold it moved back to Pu'uo'o 5 or 6 years later. The difference is, at that time there was lava on the surface, activity at Kūpaenaha the whole time. Right now we've got no lava on the surface, so we could be embarking on a longer style repose period, longer time of quiet, hopefully.
So that's the answer, Dallas. It depends on the continuous, but what you're just referring to is 46 days recently, but you know, maybe 3 months might be another number. You know, those are all answers that are probably acceptable answers, you know.
And like for me, since I'm still watching the little light in Fissure 8, and if it's over, I want to see that light shut off at some point. There's some little glow that the webcam catches, so I've been studying that really closely. So for me, it could pause for a very long time, and on the one hand, I wouldn't be surprised even if it paused for 6 months, 9 months, or even a couple years. I still think there would be a chance of coming back down into the Lower East Rift after that. Would it erupt out of Fissure 8 after all that time? Probably new cracks would happen, but maybe not. You know, so that's that degree of uncertainty we have about these things, and it depends on how you define them. And so for now, we got to look at this short term and understand that our confidence in no activity in the short term is high. We're confident that for weeks to months, probably nothing will be happening. If that changes, we'll notice. But right now, we have high confidence in no activity happening soon. So that's a good thing. That should help people get that certainty they're seeking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of flipping back and forth, saying 2 different things. One thing that I'm saying is that it's just explaining what the volcano does long term throughout our lives, throughout the history of its own creation. The other thing is, what can people actually act and judge on? And I always like to point out that we can't have any confidence in volcanoes beyond the weeks to months anyways. We can't, we can never see farther than that, no matter what. So as far as we can see... Did we see
all this coming? Nobody saw all this coming. Well, we knew things were changing, but we didn't know it would be like this.
We didn't know it would be like this. But to recap it, we did see inflation at the summit. Lava lake spilling over as early as 2015
was the first.
2015, right? More recently, it actually was April 15 or something like that. A big crack opened on the west side of Pu'uo'o, right? I want to say it was quarter mile, half mile. It was a big crack opened up on the side of Pu'uo'o.
Right. Yeah.
The crater floor started uplifting. There was an alert issued because the floor was. They even said the eruptions. Things are funky right now. Like, you know, something funky might happen. Yeah, the USGS was definitely pointing out this is the time where things can change big time. When this is happening, we don't know what's going to happen next. And so that was mid-April. Long time in advance. And that's the realistic amount of time that we can warn of volcanoes. Is a few weeks out. Like mid-April, okay, something's going to happen soon, and April 30th it happened, then May 3rd it happened. The second punch kind of came, but that's the time frame we can deal with. It's a couple weeks out. Like that's kind of warning. We can't tell you, oh, like it's going to be quiet for a year and it's going to next year. That's something we just don't have the ability to do. No. Right. So as far as we can see, there is no sign of anything. To the limit of our vision, to the limit of our monitoring, and we've often said that in volcanology we don't actually predict things, we react. It just happens, the magma's coming up from so deep, we can see the signal of it coming days or 2 weeks before it actually gets here. We're not predicting it, we're reacting to the fact that we actually see it coming. It's like looking down your driveway and someone's pulled in, it's driving to your house, like the person's gonna
here
get
they
there.
Come,
right? And there's no doubt that that's the path they're coming, and they're coming right at you. Right? But you don't get that much, it's not, it's not calling ahead. I'm not going to be there tomorrow. No, there's none of that. It's just like, okay, we see it coming. It just takes 2 weeks to get down the driveway. That's kind of 2
weeks to get down the driveway. But you see what he's saying. That's a great illustration. Totally.
So along those lines, and something I just pointed out, because the next question from Dallas is there lava in the East Rift Zone as in 55 when it came out? And the answer is absolutely. The lava from this eruption stays in there, right? 55 lava that erupted may have actually been 24 lava remobilized, so what actually was in there from before that even.
And our new book has all sorts of other complex explanations of all that.
Other ideas,
And definitely the intrusion of lava, the vertical dike that's below our row of fissures, is recognized as particularly large. There's a lot of lava underground, and it's gonna stay hot under there. And just like the 1955 lava, it could erupt one day later, years into the future, decades into the future. The volcano could slump, or the cracks could occur, or a new intrusion could go in underneath and disturb it. On the short run, it's also possible if a new intrusion came in next year, it could actually find that lava sitting under our fissures and mix with it and reactivate it. So that kind of thing can happen too. But the point is, that's not new for this eruption. Our whole rift is like that and always has been. There's pockets of lava that we're probably still not aware of today. And so we can expect that, as we say, it's eruptible for far into the future, just sitting there. It doesn't mean it's going to erupt on its own, especially in the short run. But you just got to understand that about living here. The volcano's full of lava. Even when it's drained after an event like this and has to recharge, there's still lava housed all over that could erupt one day later. And then again, is that going to be a different eruption, or is it the same eruption? So it's the same question.
In that sense, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is that people who live in Lava Zone 1 are moving back, understand what they're getting into, right? Which is fine. It's a risk that, I would take when I was younger, didn't have a family, like, it depends on the person and what situation they're in. There's nothing wrong with it, necessarily. We're not here to judge you guys, right?
But and for people their house still exists, their neighborhood still exists, they're cleaning up and moving back in there, no one wants to let that go, and so there's kind of this like soul searching. So how am I comfortable with the risk? And I think a lot of people are after all of this, as they heal, they realize I do still want to live here. Of course I do, and I know about the volcano, and obviously it's not convenient, but maybe if I can have even a few years here in my place, then it's worth it. So everybody has a different process with that. But it relates to other things going on. We got to accept that people are going to be going back to their places. There are people who have put everything into that. And if even they're isolated in the kipukas that can't be accessed directly, they're still going to go back there as soon as they can, however they can. And so that's an argument for, we know that people will be living out in these isolated places, and there's some kind of moral obligation. We can't leave people out there completely cut off from healthcare and roads and power and police and some kind of lawless, abandoned state. So whatever happens in Puna in the future, we need to accept that we are still one community, even with lava flows dividing it all, and we do have some kind of obligation to reconnect these places, to open up the access to those places, because people still have those places and they want to go back. So just something to think about.
It's an interesting point, because it's what's come up, kind of the background for this is, throughout this whole eruption, people are wondering what's going to happen to their property, right? There's been all these different rumors, let's just call them that for now, because a lot of them are unsubstantiated, going around, right? Of either land swaps or buyouts or condemnation, or it's going to become a national park, or never going to rebuild a road, or they're going to build a road tomorrow, or it's all this stuff that kind of keeps going around, right? And one of the things kind of behind it all, the way I see it, is this social engineering desire to have people not live in areas that are as hazardous, which is all well and good from a social engineering perspective. It's different if a person's actually lived there already, trying to move them out of there. Like that's just not gonna work.
And if you force them out, that's a lifetime of bitterness. Generations of bitterness are created by that. So.
And by the way, that is true of many people in my community now who have gone through this, with Mauna Ulu eruptions and Kīlauea eruptions, who were forced out, and were not given much and still are bitter about it. Generations down the line, right? So this is a really tricky thing, right? So I totally understand, like, socially engineering, we wouldn't want to build a community in a rift zone, but it's too late. It's there already. People are already moved in. They're already established. The ones who want to move back, you can't prevent them from doing that. They're going to do that. We just have to educate you guys so you understand where you are, and the signals. You've kind of been through the rodeo once at least now. You know what's up. It's not gonna ever be worse than that.
Hopefully
not.
What?
Summit collapse.
I've got a lot of worst case scenarios. We'll do that next time. It won't be like that again. What we just went through was epic in its scale, and so that's very unlikely to happen again.
But all that said, everyone who lives in Leilani tells me, oh, I live in Leilani, that I saw there was a 100-foot crack in my backyard. Okay, that's a big sign that ground cracked there through some huge event in the past, likely the 24 intrusion, right? And, 24 didn't actually come out of the ground, but 55 reactivated 24. 2018 reactivated 55. Who's to say the next eruption won't reactivate 2018 lava, right? So the lava that's sitting in the ground now may not come out from its own power today, but the next eruption, the next crack, as John pointed out, like the next crack might be caused by the next batch of lava, magma pushing through for an eruption, may start off reactivating this lava from this year in the same place, maybe not out of the actual hole of Fissure 8. Like if you look at the 55 eruption sites and the 2018 sites, they were close by on the same trend, but maybe 100 yards apart, right? So it might be within 100 yards of there, right? That's not unreasonable to consider, like in a 40-year plan.
Right.
Okay.
Think kids in 30 years from now might witness a new eruption in the same area.
In Leilani.
And then the USGS will run around and do their thing, and they'll announce, hey, we figured out the chemical signature of 2018 lava from these fissures, and everyone will be like, wow. And so you see, like, in the scale of like a generation, 30, 40 years or more, we can expect that more of these types of things will happen. And just kind of pull it together. I mean, there are only particular places in the island that actually combine civilization and Zone 1, and Leilani is one of them. And it's going to stay that way, and it's going to be there perpetually, dealing with this perpetually, right? So it's always going to be the case in Leilani, no matter what. Eruption's going to be over. It's always still going to be Zone 1. It's going to always be a place likely to erupt. You always got to watch out there, right? So, not discouraging anyone from going there. Just want everyone to be fully aware, like that's the long-term outlook for that area. So that was awareness.
Super long answer to Dallas's question about whether there's still lava there in the rift zone. But,
I think that was worthwhile.
I think we needed to go there. So we have questions a while. I'll keep going through the questions. There are no more roadblocks in place. They're all moved out. Sprinkler covering 80% of the Big Island every 8,000 years. That's not true. So Red Ray lava covers 90% of Kīlauea every 1,000 years. So that's the stat comes. It's half true, but it's Kīlauea in particular. So we are all in Kīlauea. That's where John and I both live on Kīlauea, and Pahoa's on Kīlauea, and everything we've been reporting to you guys all been Kīlauea. So the comment, the spirit of it's absolutely true.
Right.
I just need to slightly correct that. 1,000 years for Kīlauea.
And that's kind of mind-boggling when you think about anywhere you drive in all of Puna and almost all of the national park side of Ka'u also, all of that area is guaranteed to have probably several lava flows in the next 1,000 years. Right? It's amazingly active, this volcano, so it's just to understand it all will be covered. Almost all of it is pretty much guaranteed to be covered in the next 1,000 years. That's not a lot of time. for that much area to be covered. So that's the reality that we've been living on, standing on this whole time in Hawaii.
Yeah, yeah. But as we've heard even today from Puna folks, right? Like, you know, the jungle will come and cover us lava faster than we can blink.
Yeah.
Right? So the jungle is its own destructive force. It will consume your house before any lava ever does in this place where you really got to be strong and kind of rugged to just deal with, you know, like that aspect of raw nature, right? You know, and a raw ocean and a raw lava you gotta like garden in and all that other stuff. It's just all part of it.
You can always get away from the lava, but can you escape the mold?
Yeah,
the mildew is more of a threat in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so
and if we wait too long for the viewing area, the forest will grow. We won't have anything to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need a volunteer corps chainsaws because that's how quick things grow around here. Yeah, in fact, we should start a time lapse of the flow growing, you know, from someone's house. So Mary Eisenhower is asking where can we get the book of Working on Mainland. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to show you guys the actual book title.
Professional paper.
Oops, that's the wrong button.
Maybe a flashlight.
Oh yeah, flashlight.
Cool.
All right, so yeah, it's published by the USGS. It's called 200 Years of Magma Transport and Storage. But really the easiest way to find it is if you go and look for this. Professional paper 1806. Right, look that up, and I believe you can, through the USGS website, it's probably a way to order it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you go. That's the answer to the book. So, this back around. All right, do a few more questions. Theories on a hotspot. We're going to do that in a different time, Ethan.
Yeah, different time.
That's too huge a can of worms that we want to get to. What's actually the hub?
For Halloween, we should do a worst case scenario story. On Halloween, we'll just talk about the worst possible thing that could ever happen. Just, wouldn't that be fun?
I think the story of the guy who went sampling in Halemaumau, well, we'll still save that one for Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might scare people though. So
yeah.
We'll save it.
So what's the hub? The hub's a community outreach center, you know, for people who are displaced. I was going to leave it at that. There's a huge history. It's been here since May 5th, I believe, May 5th. So that's a huge topic. It's probably going to be a movie made about that someday, so I won't try to summarize it in one sentence. Name of F8, still the name. We're still waiting for it to be announced. So, Ethan worked for Forest and Trail. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I probably saw you out there. And Libby, we love dinner. My family is a little more difficult to accommodate with young kids. Mm-hmm. Usually going to a restaurant does not actually accomplish anyone getting to eat anything. So, thank you for your offer. You know, come hang out with us at the hub sometime. You know, and share one of our community dinners is maybe a better way to do it, right? Yeah. So we had our first one October 1st. We'll have another one October 15th, I believe, is the next date for our community dinners here at the hub.
It was nice. I'm glad that. I hope we do a lot.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, we could definitely get some more people out. So we expect a little bigger turnout next time. So come out on the 15th, potluck here at the hub. And I see Ethan's commenting. Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, it was good to see you out there too. How safe is Lava Zone 2 in general? Okay. How about in the last 200 years, something like 30% has been covered?
Okay.
I believe that's the number. About what Steve Brantley said on one of the community meetings.
So if
it's only slightly lower than Zone 1, basically.
If you're in Zone 2, you're close enough to a Zone 1 that just in terms of topography and land area, you're in an area that is quite likely to be first in line to be inundated if an eruption occurs in Zone 1.
So you're downhill is Zone 1.
Downhill is Zone 1.
There is definitely some downhill involved. So like the lava flows like in kind of shoots, you know, like we saw in Mackenzie. Like it's not going to take out, you know, all a sloped area at once, but you're playing roulette. You know, like it can definitely get you in Zone 2.
Yeah.
So.
But it can also get you in Zone 3.
Absolutely.
And so the vast majority of the land area on this island, or more than half of it anyway, so the majority is Zone 3, which means you're at risk for being covered in lava by Kīlauea, Mauna Loa, or Hualalai. And so that anyone who's watching what we've been through in Puna thinking, oh, well, they're crazy to live that close. When these volcanoes get rocking and rolling, just understand they can reach anywhere in Zone 3. And then above that, there's other propensities. So we're all in this together, I guess, is the message there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
if you live here, you need to be aware of this.
Puna is more likely, like historically, but like there are other also highly likely places.
Right.
Yeah.
And thinking of Zone 1, Zone 2, let's consider Hawaiian Ocean View Estates. They're often pointed to as one of the most at-risk places, and
alongside Leilani.
Alongside Leilani, because they're right adjacent to the center of the southwest rift of Mauna Loa, which is historically the most active part of Mauna Loa. And so they are quite at risk to be covered in lava if there's a south rift eruption of Mauna Loa. But you gotta also, like, give them a break. Like, they didn't put the subdivision there. And just because they're so close to the rift doesn't mean they're gonna be the ones that get covered in lava. It can affect other people too.
Oh,
and
totally,
so people in Hawaiian Ocean View hopefully can get the education and awareness they need to know what to do if an eruption begins. But that's something everybody needs to pay attention to, not just if you're near a Zone 1 or in one of these very considered at-risk neighborhoods. So everybody who lives here needs to keep informed.
So a question from Smiley, and was good to see you here at the hub earlier, Smiley.
Yeah.
So Smiley is the steward over at Green Mountain, and she's asking, when you say hundreds of feet at Green Mountain, referring to the craters filling in or the channel? And I can't see the rest of the comment.
Well, the 100 feet at Green Mountain, I think, is actually seaward of Green Mountain, around the Four Corners area, and from Green Mountain towards the coast. The accumulation I remember hearing was over 100 feet in a few areas around, adjacent to the base of Green Mountain. The craters within Green Mountain, especially that back pit, I remember it as being the deepest, might amount to 100 feet or more of accumulated lava, but I think that measurement was for areas near Green Mountain but outside of the mountain cone.
Yeah, I think we have to check with Les Peterson, who actually made those maps, and he's out of town right now. But I think maybe just east of the mouth, like between where the channel is and the kind of the open end of the horseshoe of Green Mountain. I suspect that's the location.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of visualizing too. Would be the deepest.
We'll check Smiley though, and we'll get back to you on that. Yeah. Okay, so another question. Dome volcanoes just finished. How about other islands? Why don't they have active volcanoes?
Oh.
That's a big can of worms, but let's give it a quick crack.
Should do a...
So, first of all, there are active volcanoes in other islands, in particular Maui has active volcanoes. By definition, for geologists, within the last 10,000 years, if it's erupted, it's active, right? It's kind of arbitrary, but that's the number that we usually are comfortable with having to pass before we consider nothing is actually still going on.
Yeah, and we generally say active versus inactive. Extinct and dormant, those aren't really used as much.
I use them.
Okay.
I call volcano active and erupting.
Active and
or
erupting.
active and dormant.
Ah, okay. That's a good way to break it down. But it takes a little bit of, word kung fu.
Mauna Loa is active but dormant.
Yeah.
Mauna Kea is active but dormant.
Yep. Okay, I can
Hualalai
do that.
is active but dormant. Okay, you guys getting the pattern here? Haleakala, active but dormant.
Kohala is considered inactive. But you never know.
Yeah, so that's the part of the can of worms we're not going to go into right now.
There's a lot of volcanoes that make up the chain of islands.
But to answer your question directly, Red Ray, the hotspot's the deal. Where the hotspot is underneath Mauna Loa, Kīlauea, and Loihi, and those are the zones being continually supplied magma at the highest rates of anywhere. Once volcanoes move away from that area, they still have magma inside of them. They can still erupt, they can still have a process, but they're not being resupplied anymore. And that's why they start to wind down. Right. So you can begin the winding down phase once you move away from this zone of supply, which we are still over in Kīlauea, which is why it's going to keep erupting the rest of our lives.
It's definitely going to keep erupting. Yeah. And like another interesting note, there's evidence that 5 different islands had active eruptions as recently as 160,000 years ago, that kind of ballpark. So even though the further islands are away from the hotspot, there are different types of volcanic activity that can still happen. And so there was a period as recently as a little over 150,000 years ago, about 160,000 years ago, if I remember right, where 5 different islands had erupting volcanoes. And that's not that far back geologically. And so it gets really interesting when you think of the whole chain, but different videos sometime. We'll get into that more.
Yeah, we'll have to go into that later. Yeah. So But basically, it's got to do with a hotspot. Yeah, so that's the short version of the answer. So different kinds of lava. The lava can have different chemistry. And depending on the chemistry, it's got different geologic names. And then when it cools, the way I think of it at least, then it has a texture. And the texture is often dictated by the chemistry, but you often can't tell until it's actually cooled all the way. Sometimes you can, but not always, tell what kind of lava it actually is. So it's got to do not just the chemistry, but also importantly with how much gas is in there, which can change everything regardless of chemistry. So that's the short version of that answer of different kinds of lava.
We could do a whole show on that one,
because that also is another huge topic. So someone else says volcanoes are sleeping giants. You never know. It's true, you never know, but we do have a long driveway to look down. That's the big difference with volcanoes unlike earthquakes. You don't see that with earthquakes. You don't see like all the earthquakes coming.
Yeah, good point.
Right, so that's the difference to me.
That's an important point. Yeah.
Yes, they are sleeping giants, and you kind of do know. You do know, like Mauna Loa. It's not like you never know. Yeah, we do know. It's going to erupt.
It will.
Unquestionable. I'll bet you anything. I'll bet you the president's life.
You're
sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I bet you my life. Who I value more than anyone else's, and that's not a political statement at all. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. In fact, there are some rumors circulating already that we've kind of discussed in our last update how there was a little bit of earthquake activity at Mauna Loa. It doesn't indicate any impending eruption. But it's only a matter of time. It may be that this is one of, let's call it, some number of events that happens in the next year, 2, 3, who knows how many years, that kind of build up to an eruption. That could easily be the case.
Yeah.
Especially now that Kīlauea is not moving anymore, and maybe still wiggly, and maybe Mauna Loa could actually give it a nudge and push it aside a little bit and make a little more space for itself.
Elbow room.
And it's going to do that, and it's going to adjust, and that might be a year's process before it can actually erupt, or it might not, because it's actually been priming for years already.
Right.
So we don't know. Mauna Loa is going to erupt, and let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when that time comes, and we will
talk about it.
We will be here and talk about it with you guys. Yeah. So let's see. Someone mentioned USGS has got a good timeline of the eruption posted. Yeah, and it was posted on Tracker as well in image form, so you guys can check out the main HVO website. And the first item under the news section is their release of the summary. Otherwise, check out Hawaii Tracker, which has it posted images you guys can share on Facebook and all of that. Not a PDF. So okay, let me kind of. Keep sliding down. Okay, more book questions. And yeah, more book questions. I think we covered the book, so let's kind of. You guys are probably commenting faster than we can answer because we take 5 minutes per answer. So we're never gonna. This is like an infinite exercise till the phone runs out of battery. Probably. Yeah.
Questions.
So okay, let's keep going down. Oh, this is where we're talking about mold. Okay, oh yeah, Visitor Center in the park, yeah. Names, we can't tell you any names yet, but there's keep being told any day it's going to be announced, so we'll see. All volcanoes erupt together, worst case scenario for Halloween, yeah, we could have a dramatic
I think it'd be fun. I've done that before for ranger talks.
Yeah.
It's kind of exciting, but some people get really scared when you start talking about that stuff. So we would have to be very clear that it's for your information, theoretical, if we do that. A lot of crazy things can happen with volcanoes. That's what makes it kind of amazing to learn about them.
Mauna Loa tilt meters, yes, there are more than just a summit. I'm not sure if they're all online, but as in Kīlauea, we expect to see a summit signal first, and at least in our historical record, most Mauna Loa eruptions have a summit phase first, and then a flank phase, and maybe be separated by a year or more sometimes, but usually has that kind of pattern where you have something at the summit first before you see something at the rift, at least signal-wise. So yeah, I think the summit inflation tilt meter is kind of good first line of monitoring. You don't have to worry about those other tilt meters, and we will. And let you guys know. And
in general, Mauna Loa gives a lot of announcements whenever she does anything. So in general, the historical eruptions have been preceded by a lot of earthquakes and shaking and ground movement and things to notice a long time in advance. So most likely we'll get a lot of signals from Mauna Loa if it gets going. So, all right.
So, all right, guys, I think I'm catching up on the questions here. Let's see. Hi, Arthur. Yeah, catching up. All right, we got to the bottom of the comments. So awesome, guys. So,
all in a day's work.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. So, I'm not sure what else I had planned to show or talk to you guys about. But we might want to.
We had that neat thermal image of F8 camera online.
Let's look at that. Yeah. So.
Okay. And there's still a tiny light visible on the webcam that Dane DuPont and I are watching and debating about how much of a light it really is visibly. But there's still heat out there. But when you look at this thermal image, it kind of reveals what's happening there. So mostly looks like some kind of passive heat. Should I point out some stuff on here?
Yeah, so just guys,
orient on that
October 4th update on the HVO photo and video chronology page. So, so yeah, let me get the bigger version just to make sure we get the right resolution here. And all right, so here is our Fissure 8 and the thermal image of it. And here John's going to point out some stuff.
Right, so we can see the cone highlighted in red and orange and purple. This is the rim of the Fissure 8 cone. Down in the bottom, that black area, that's the pit that collapsed after the lava squeezed up. So we can see this kind of purplish with some orange and stuff. This is the area that the lava erupted into and filled the bottom of the cone in the beginning of September, and then it collapsed in the center. And so there's some at least hot rock, maybe gases venting around the edges there, but you can see in the deepest part, there's no glow whatever. That's cold, right? So the hottest areas are actually these little gas vents back over here.
The back wall.
The little glow we see is coming from somewhere in this area of the back wall, and that makes sense because it looks like there's really hot gas coming out. And we also see that the edges up here along the rim are hot. And my thinking about that is this wide cone of cinders is storing a lot of heat inside. It's all ice insulated by the pile of cinders. And the heat it's easiest for the heat to seep out of this narrow edge where there's the most surface area. So that all makes sense. And this is all consistent with what we would expect the vent to look like as it's cooling down, right? So we're watching that little glow, we're watching these hot spots, but this kind of heat isn't in the center, it's not indicating activity. It's more just venting really hot gases and spending heat that's accumulated under the cone. So, but it's a really neat image. It tells a lot. So.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there is no lava in that picture.
No lava. It's a thermal image, and this is the color to indicate hotness. It's not a visible image of glowing red hot lava. So very important to know that.
Yeah, just in case anyone missed that, yeah, that's that, yeah. So also on the USGS website, they've put out some pictures of some befores and afters, right? So here's yesterday, Pu'uo's been putting out some gas recently, so that's still happening, still some fuming. I saw some yesterday when I was actually flying with Scott Wilson. There is Pu'uiki, and actually here's some point out there are some before and after satellites on this website as well. You can compare side by side, or there are some images in Hawaii Tracker where we've actually superimposed them on each other. You guys can kind of see like one for the other. So check out Hawaii Tracker for some. If you guys want to see.
Very cool.
Those are kind of, I think, a cooler way to look at it right there, yeah?
Yeah, really, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing to see the before and after changes.
So I think we've done a GPS, we've done a tilt, we've talked about a lot of questions. Maybe I can point out the earthquakes. We haven't talked about the earthquakes yet. So here's our earthquakes map for today. Let's give it a refresh. These are all the earthquakes on here. Most of these are below magnitude 2.5. There's one 2.5 up by Waimea. This one all the way up here. Everything else is lower than that. So these are all kind of small earthquakes. We don't actually have a deep Pahala earthquake today. We actually have mostly our summit earthquakes. Summit earthquakes up here, and South Flank earthquakes down in here. And one Mauna Loa earthquake following kind of where the swarm happened a few days ago. Almost a week ago now, huh?
Yeah.
So that's the earthquake report. There's not a lot to talk about there. All is normal. This is basically normal activity here, this pattern of earthquakes. So maybe what I wanted to maybe do is look through the report that they issued today and make sure we didn't miss any points, and we have any talking points from that.
Right.
I know we're kind of dragging on today. I didn't plan on doing a long update, but it's all good. We have this twice a week schedule is kind of.
We answered all your questions.
We're saving a lot of stuff, until we have a chance to say it, to you guys,
And it is worth looking at the report they put out again, because they do give us some ideas about what hazards exist, and they urge us to be aware that it could still reactivate in the future. It just doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon, and that's a really positive idea. And they share things to know about the future, so check this out a little bit more.
Yeah, so
hazards.
Let me read some of these key sentences right here, right?
The key ones.
So, it's been 30 days since lava has been active at the surface of Kīlauea volcano. Monitoring shows low rates of seismicity, steady relatively low rates of deformation across the volcano, and only minor gas emissions. These observations indicate the resumption of eruption or summit collapse is unlikely in near term. That's the key one right there, right?
Unlikely in the near term.
Unlikely in the near term.
Near term is like weeks to months.
Exactly.
Possibly longer, but really just weeks to months is near term.
At most a year out, let's say. After.
But we don't really know when we start saying that.
No,
things could change by then.
But within months, to no more than a year to give an absolute outer, that's how far they're kind of talking, right? So something could easily happen within weeks to months before anything years come into play. So just forget the whole years thing, actually. So likewise, they're lowering their alert level for ground-based hazards from watch to advisory, aviation code from orange to yellow. Hazards are still present, they say, and they say that residents should be prepared to self-evacuate in the unlikely event of renewed activity. That's basically what they're saying. So as far as
I'd like to read a sentence because it's a sentence.
I would like you to read the next.
Yeah, the one.
However much you want to read next.
Yeah. So the part that I've been paying most attention to is activity at the fissure. Hey. And so. Okay, so the seismicity is low, ground deformation continues, but at a really low rate. That's our tilt and GPS. And then they say an exception is within the Middle East Rift Zone, where data show evidence of reinflation between Pu'uo'o and Highway 130. So that's the lower part of the Middle Rift. One interpretation of the signal is that the rift zone is refilling with magma following withdrawal during the 2018 eruption. An increase in this refilling rate or other change could result in new eruptive vents along any portion of the East Rift Zone. So that's their grim warning, right? Based on the signs, the changes are small, so it's not like we're expecting this to happen today or next week or even in the next couple months. But the fact is, we are seeing this, and if it accelerates, it could erupt again. And if you're living here, you need to understand that that's in the range of possibilities, right?
Yeah. And that tells us what to look for. We're looking for an increase in the refilling rate, or some other change. This is why we're giving you guys reports, basically, right? So we're not seeing those things now, but that's why we're looking for that, right? I think it's interesting, not to derail the whole thing here, but, it's one interpretation, right? So, like I'm saying, there's still other possibilities exist, but that's the one you need to worry about if you're trying to live there. Yeah.
Because we need to know if there's magma. And it might not be that. I have to give Phil, his analysis is valid, that there are other possible explanations, but if it continues or accelerates, then we'll watch out.
The alternate theory is not as dangerous, so...
Yeah.
That's why you worry about this one.
The other theory
is basically it. Yeah.
And let's see, what is the other thing? No suggestion of activity in the short run. The other interesting thing they do mention, somewhere in here they mention the summit. At the summit, if significant draining of the magma reservoir resumes, more collapse events could occur. Alternatively, resupply of magma to the summit could lead to explosions or reappearance of lava. So we've talked about this. We would prefer it to be lava in the crater and not an explosion. But this is the other thing, the lava flows get all the attention, but it's really the summit that can have the biggest impact. And so everybody down here had to deal with the lava. We often forget to mention Volcano Village and golf course, people didn't sleep because they were having hundreds of earthquakes day and night, punctuated with the 5.3, often at 2 in the morning. And that was exhausting, stressful, terrifying for people. And that's the real thing, you know, the future of the summit, if it continued to collapse, could be a much larger scale of disaster. And they're throwing that in there not to scare you, but to start educating people about the potentiality of the things that could happen up there. But what they're mentioning is what would need to happen for more collapse is if the magma continued draining. And Phil and I have debated this a lot. There's only hard to conceive of explanations which would cause it to drain further than what we've already seen. And so that might be subject of a different talk about the magma supply or something. But they have to add this in here so that everybody's aware of the full range of the possibilities, and the summit has the greater potential danger. And so we're not seeing that danger emerging now, but it's in the report because that's something that anyone living here needs to keep somewhere in their mind to understand that these disasters could emerge. But we're going to watch the signs to see if it's going to have activity at the summit and look at the situation to see what kind of activity might happen up there. But currently, again, we have this weird, funny situation where magma doesn't seem to be really going into the summit, but there does seem to be some inflation in the rifts. And maybe we can get into that a different time, but that could also be a good thing, because if there is magma coming into the rift, maybe it's just going to recharge for a while before it works its way back up to having lava eruptions in the crater. So there's scenarios here that won't be so bad, and other scenarios that could be bad that we just need to know about for your information. So they include that in their explanation of what to look for. So it's really the people who live near the crater at the summit have different reasons to pay attention to the volcano than we do down here. And that it's, again, everybody needs to keep awareness for their area. So
yeah, so you know, in particular, we talked about like collapse could continue, but something else would have to happen first. We have to see the magma going somewhere, some ground signal, something. So it's totally possible, but there's a step missing between here and there.
Yeah.
The step could come, and then once that step happens, they want you to know that the second step from now, the next step beyond that one
could be
would be these explosion potentials, right? So you'd like to know as far ahead of time as possible. That's what's happening now.
And we can't be too certain of what the change would be, an earthquake or, you know, some major change would have to tip us into that other area of scenarios. And we don't know what that change what form it might take. So, but that's a very important point. You know, there does need to be a change to get us into these other situations. And right now, we're not seeing a lot of change. Right now, there's no indication of renewed activity in the short term. And that's a positive feeling for most people, I think. So.
Yeah, we're all happy about that. Yeah. So, one thing that stuck out to me, you know, so you guys know, you guys can find this on the USGS monitoring page under the Kīlauea update, right? That's where all this information is put out. So you guys can go read it. It's actually easy to read. You guys can read through it. There's a lot of information in there. I won't read the whole thing to you guys, but one thing that stuck out to me, not just from the report I was telling John earlier, you know, I actually had a chance to fly over with Scott Wilson yesterday over the Kīlauea summit. I'll show you guys maybe a couple pictures real quick before we sign off here. But one thing that was apparent to me is some of those big blocks that are kind of leaning on the inside of the crater edge. They're huge blocks, but they're actually floating on rubble, right?
Just sitting.
I mean, I can't describe. You know, I don't have like an acre ruler to measure how many acres these blocks are. These blocks are huge, right? You could like fit like a Costco on them or whatever, right? You know, like huge pieces of land, right? You know, and
just hanging there.
They're hanging there.
Yeah.
And I was just telling John how I just the other day, you know, I was like, you know, went to my office and put something down on a table, put it on the edge of a paper or something, right, or a stack of papers. And it seemed stable. Like, I mean, I walked away, I went sit down, did something else. 5 minutes later, the thing fell over. And I was like, what was that? You know, like, and, you know, maybe you guys have something somewhere happen. You put something down, and it's just slightly unstable, and it just takes 5 minutes to fall over, right? Or it's sliding. You put it on, like, you know, on the edge of a seat and slightly inclined. It just starts sliding, and, like, you know, eventually it falls off a chair. But like, it takes a while to do that. And that's the feeling I got looking at those big blocks on the edge of the summit. is that even without, you know, if you have a big earthquake, they can definitely move. But even without a big earthquake, those things are big and heavy enough they could actually like be slowly sliding. And someday, some of those chunks are going to fall in. They're going to cause big ash clouds. People are likely to freak out, saying, "Oh my God, it's about to explode!" We can expect ash clouds from big collapses like that. I'll just tell you guys,
rock falls,
you know, ahead of time right now. That's likely to happen. It's likely to have rock falls in there. Likely to see like ash clouds and plumes from the summit. That in of itself is not reason for panic. You know, like it takes the earthquakes and other signals as well. So. It's not, you know, but that stuck out to me, you know, it's something, oh, well, that's going to happen, you know.
Keep it in mind.
So, you know, we'll watch that as well. So,
you want to show some...
Anything else about this report before I show some pictures? Or?
I think those are really good ones, and if it also includes information about, you know, the flow field. There are reasons it's really treacherous, it's hot. There could be local gases, we kind of covered that. So I think we covered the main things.
Yeah, we talked about the ocean coastline earlier, so yeah, that's all good. So let me pull up a picture here for you guys, or a couple pictures, and I don't think I have them all sorted in this device, but I can find a couple of good ones. So here we go. Well, here's a view of the summit.
Wow.
From the air, right? So this is kind of from above the Kīlauea area. Kīlauea crater is actually kind of right in there.
Right in that cloud, yeah.
Right in there. Down in there, right? So this is probably the widest angle I have. You guys can see there were some kind of clouds that were dodging in and out of in between, but even still there wasn't enough space to actually circle around a crater and in between the clouds. It's just fascinating, right? So the outer, so this is the main crater floor here. That's kind of at the same level as before. I can't call it even undisturbed because there's big cracks running through it almost all the way to the edge, all the way back to here. And there's a visible one in this photograph here, but there's actually smaller ones kind of back where you can't see over here. Right, but this is the area of big collapses right through here, and this is basically the size and more or less a place of Kīlauea crater as it used to be, the deep pit instead within it here. So there's kind of different stages of areas of collapse. Let me kind of skip through here to the ones that are kind of picked out. Here you can see the old road coming across, where it dropped down, and this is this kind of big block I was telling you guys, one of these big blocks that's connected here, right? You guys can kind of see the thickness of this piece of cliff, right? And likely that's about how thick this block is. You can't see from this angle, but this thing is not 1,000 feet thick, right? It's thinner than that, right? So, you know, that's why it's kind of floating on this other rubble right in here. When you kind of zoom in here, is actually another interesting piece of road. You actually see a piece of road down it right in here.
Oh wow!
There's a piece of road right in here on this other block. It's farther up than this one, right? This is the road. The road looks a little farther, right? Farther down or farther away. A little closer up, right? Facing the opposite way. So this piece actually comes. This piece comes from the road over here, and this piece comes from the road over here, right? And the parking lot I drew out actually sat over top of this area right in here. Wow. That's where the parking lot used to sit. And maybe let me find that image and show you guys here, since I have it drawn up here somewhere. I know exactly where. Oh, it's down here. All right. So all I did is I took the USGS paper and superimposed our images and just traced it out. So here on an image of the down drop floor, here's the size of Kīlauea crater, how it used to be, where the lava lake was inside, and where the road and parking lot used to be right in here. So if you kind of look closely, this is the block that has that piece of road across. So it's kind of going like this, and the other little block is down in here. So it's kind of going like that. Right? So that came from here, and this came from there. Right, and the parking lot sits above, like the area between these two blocks right here. So I've been wondering, like, where exactly is that? Right, so that's more or less where it sits. It used to sit above, kind of near, but above that road area on that block. And one thing I wanted to point out that kind of struck me when I was looking at this is you look at the size of Kīlauea crater before this event, there it is, and you look at it afterwards, and it's shifted east, and we see that in our animations, but it's actually more or less the same size, even though it's largely inset, right? This is a piece of the original crater floor of Kīlauea. It's the only piece left.
It's amazing.
it's hard to tell. I've been trying to look at my photographs, and I'm going to look at some later as well. But this is probably the biggest, tallest bump on Old Halemauma crater floor. That the lava overflows recently went around it, and there might be some pieces of lava overflows from 2018, maybe if anything stuck on the side, but it's really hard to tell because they're all kind of cracked and collapsed and jumbled. But that's basically a piece of the crater floor, which means that this was the edge of the overall pit. Like this kind of crater kind of grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it got like, you know, all the way over here, and like this is the edge of it that slid in. So this is actually the old cliff between the crater floor and the lava pit. Wow. Even though there was no pit, no lava in the pit when it was this size, right? So that kind of stayed the same shape. The deepest part of the crater is right in here, which is not too far off of the center of the old thing, right? And not too far off of the lava lake actually was. Not exactly in the same place, but that's more or less the same size. What's really the biggest difference is this outer thing where everything within there, including this pit, all dropped down, right? So like that's really the size of the collapse. More so than this. This is basically keeping the shape of how it was beforehand, in a way, right? Even though it kind of all shifted and slid and slumped over, right? And one thing I kind of was looking at in this image, and I'll show you guys in the pictures looks slightly different, as you can see, there's lots of different ledges, right? So here's HVO and Jagger Museum in Wikahuna, and I had actually counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels that existed beforehand of the crater floor, right? You kind of look from the crater floor going down, you know, maybe count those as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more to get down into there, right? So there's actually 5 more levels in there, right? And some of these are actually fairly narrow. So when I show you guys some of the pictures, you can barely see these things because it looks like rubble is kind of starting to cover these. Rubble is kind of showering down and filling most of these ledges everywhere. So you're mostly going to see a rubble wall with tiny bits of ledges sticking out. And that's probably going to be more and more true the more forward in time we actually go. So there's a couple slippers on this side as well, kind of floating free. And there's one big chunk of the crater floor on this side that used to be the same level as up here that all sunk in. This thing is really thick and deep. That's why it kind of slid in place, right? That's amazing. So that thing is still there. And then this piece over here is also thick and deep as well. And like this and this are kind of 2 edges, right? Interestingly, this one has 82 fissure from April 82 going across it over here. It has the 71 and 74 fissures down an area over here. I believe the 74 is this one, and the 71, this one, I might have them backwards, but they're really close together right here. They're also sinking down with the thing as well. And that's a September of 74. I'm sorry, July of 74, because in September of 74, we had an eruption on this block, more or less across over here, and I've been looking, I can't quite see for sure that the fissure is still there. There's a big crack that runs in the same direction, which might be where the fissure was, but there's basically the September 74 fissure on this side, and then one on this side, and there's 3 fissures on this side, all kind of went for the ride down in there. It's amazing. So when we look at these pictures in the future, I don't have time to get into the detail today, you actually can look and see like where these fissures kind of come across these crater walls, and we can actually look at what those dikes might look like. And, you know, the spoiler is they're basically much thinner than you would imagine. Thin little strands kind of all twining together and working their way through. So I'll give a preview of what will come about that. Yeah. That we can see that there. We also can see it on this side over here. Over kind of like through here, but then to some degree a little bit overall. It's harder to see in here actually. I'm never going to give you this area quite yet, so mostly in here is where I'm looking. So those are kind of some first order observations, and I've seen you guys, a lot of people asking comments of the analysis of the summit, what's going on up there. So that's kind of basically the orientation of what there is up there. Everything above here didn't actually move. But let me show you guys a couple final photographs to wrap it up here. I know we've been dragging on longer than even our usual long updates. So where is it? Let me show you guys.
It's a special day though. It's Yellow Advisory Day.
Yellow Advisory Day, yeah.
We've never had that before, so we might as well talk more.
So like here's a view looking straight down under the airplane into the lowest part of the crater. So the fascinating thing to me is you can't see the bottom from the ground anywhere. Yep. It's just too far down. But you have to be straight above it, and we actually flew right over top of the thing. A little eerie. It kind of felt like we were stealing a glimpse of like something forbidden. you know, as Mouse put it after flight. But that's the deepest point right in there. And it's just basically, you know, looks like a bunch of rubble. It looks like, oh, it's just like little cobbles and pebbles. But, you know, these are gigantic boulders. Like that thing.
House
like,
size.
I mean, look at the size of that thing, right? That thing is down like, well, we're 3,000 feet in the air. The crater's 2,000 feet deep. We're 5,000 feet above that boulder.
It's huge.
Okay, that thing's huge, right? So in comparison, look at the size of the. Have a road in this picture? It's not in this picture. But you guys saw the size of the road in the last picture, right? Like, that boulder is probably wider than the road, right? That thing is as big as a house.
That's incredible.
Actually, right? So that's deceiving. The size of these blocks in here. These things are gigantic, right? So that's a fascinating thing there.
Very cool. All the sulfur venting around in here too. All the vigorous sulfur vents.
Lots of sulfur vents down in there, yeah. Some very yellow sulfur. Let's see if I can show you guys something better about that. So yeah, there's a picture of the sulfur vents. Kind of closer up, right? Almost like a vertical crack that's fuming, right? So we're building along the edges, all along there. Right, this is the area that's kind of putting out steam and gas and making clouds that form above there. Yeah, that's still going on in there. And is there any last picture to show you guys? Oh yeah, this one. No, is that the one? No, the back one. Bear with me, you guys. Oh, where is it? One of these, you can actually see the observatory. Where is it? Not quite. There it is. Alright, so those steps that's pointing out to you guys on that image. There is HBO. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And there's our kind of in between one. Here's what I was talking about before, how so much rubble, you can barely see some of these ledges anymore, right? That's a ledge right there, but like it's almost, like right here, it's almost all the way buried. Here it's sticking out a little bit, right? But there, you know, you basically have your, I think this is like the 6, 7, 8. This one, 9. And way down, right there, it's 10.
Wow.
Right. So, one thing that you know, I've been trying to orient myself is looking at the crater from different angles, and the best view of the deepest part from the ground is actually right now that's open is Volcano House. Where is a picture that shows what I want to talk about? Yeah, there, that one. So from Volcano House, you actually can see this is that western ledge, right, that has that September 74 fissure, maybe right in here where that crack is. It's hard to really tell. Somewhere maybe right in there. But this is the one I'm saying was really thick, right? You guys can see how thick this big chunk of rock is, right? That thing is actually rooted still, unlike some of these other pieces. Like that's the one with the road on it. There's a road, right? This thing is not really rooted, right? It might look like it's coming out of the cliff, but that's rubble underneath there, right? And we know that this thing actually fits back up to the top. But what I was going to say is when you look at the Volcano House, you actually can see this is the lowest thing you can see, right? Wow. It looks super, super deep, right? So from the rim, that's maybe like a third of the way down. There's another 2/3 of the bottom of the pit you can't see at all from anywhere in the park unless you're in the air.
That's incredible.
So like, just to give you guys, you know, like, that's why you can't see the bottom anywhere, and why you're not likely to unless they actually open up the road beyond the Geography Museum someday to right above that zone. You can't quite see, like right above here to look back this way in. It's not likely to happen anytime soon, but that's the spot that you need to be at, maybe over here potentially, but that's even more sketch. That's where the road falls in. So I'd rather be up here where nothing fell in to look in than, you know, personally. So we'll see. But yeah, so you know, the crater floor before was 400 feet, like from this level to where the crater floor was, which was more or less like level in the air.
Here, yeah. This is probably 400 feet here.
Because this is, yeah, you're right. So this crater floor collapsed, but on this edge, the crater wall wasn't 400 feet. It was actually a lot, almost nothing, yeah? So this fell in not 400 feet there.
Yep.
The floor of Kīlauea, this is the kind of edge of Kīlauea. I pointed out it hasn't really changed shape that much. That collapsed, you know, basically this is the lowest point, 1,600 feet.
It's
right?
incredible.
So 1,600 feet plus the 400 is 2,000 feet from the rim to the bottom of the pit. It's the way that I calculate it.
Wow.
Does that make sense, right? Not actually this rim, the rim on the other side, which is 400 feet higher than this.
Yeah.
Right? Because like this counts as 1,600.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Yep.
So 2,000 feet top to bottom, right? And so I haven't checked recently, you know, like the depth of the Grand Canyon, you know, from overlooks, but it's getting there. Yeah, I remember being at the Black Canyon, and that thing's 2,000 feet deep. That's impressive, you know. So that thing is massive.
Very massive.
So, all right, guys, you know, we're dragging on a long time. We'll just leave you guys with that as a final image. You know, post some images when I can online. You know, we've covered a lot of ground today. You know, we kind of, at least I felt it was good to do that. It's been a while to kind of cover that.
Yeah.
Huge announcement yesterday. You know, big implications. You know, for how people move forward. You know, even though scientifically, you know, we've been riding the same wave for a while now, which is fine.
We can't eliminate the uncertainty, but hopefully people can see that we have more confidence at this moment that it's not going to restart anytime soon. So we just go with that for now, you know. So hopefully it lasts.
Yeah. Oh, one more question that just kind of triggered. So it's near the water table, how far down it is, and probably yes. The issue is the water table is really hard to map in that area. The thing is that we have lots of dikes and sills that prevent water flow, and you can actually imagine a dike and a sill creating like a little L shape, and then you can have water table locally in a spot like that that doesn't go beyond that. So the water table isn't like one nice uniform lens in there. It's got all this texture and pockets and stuff like that. Yeah. And I actually heard a report. I didn't just last update. I might have already. Maybe I didn't report that scientists from the USGS, while they were still at HVO, watching the crater collapse, saw the area of lava tubes form on a wall of the crater. I'm going to turn the camera around. So more or less in here, some lava tubes have opened up, and they described seeing water coming out of this tube for hours after the collapse happened. And then it stopped, and it hasn't happened ever since. So that is an example of a place where water was stuck in a place underground, probably between some magmatic bodies that prevented water flow, and was just stuck there and drained out when it got cracked. Right? So that's a small version of what might be happening inside of that pit. So there is a water in there somewhere, not only to deal with the heat from the ground, but there's always barriers to water moving around through there, and it might keep it trapped in a place, prevent it from moving through. So that's really hard to tell how it interacts, which is what I'm sure where we're getting at. What are the chances of explosions from that? And we just have no idea. We have no idea. We know the water is down there. The potential always exists, but to try to map it is really, really difficult at this point.
We may yet see water accumulate in the bottom of the crater at some point. It's at about the depth where that might be a possibility, but it's very much the wait and see to see if we're going to get water intrusion. You know, we're looking into a future. We don't have any uncertainty about that. More long term, how quickly will water saturate this new collapse pit? How quickly will the lava return? It's really hard to judge at this time.
Yeah. What I can say is that we don't see nearly enough steam right now to believe there's any interaction happening right now.
Yeah.
So whatever's happening, it hasn't happened yet. If it's going to happen, it hasn't happened yet. It may not happen.
One moment at a time.
All right. And with that, I'll just add, stay classy, Puna.
Yeah, stay classy,
Thank you, guys. Puna. And we'll talk to you again soon. Aloha.